Welcome to You Talk Sports. It is the Monday after opening weekend of March Madness 2024. And what an exciting batch of games we had that we are going to be covering today. We are going to be breaking down and taking takes from fans from around the country, the games that took place over this weekend. And most importantly, we are going to be looking into our predictions for the Sweet 16 and filling out your second chance entry. If you'd like to join us here on the broadcast, just go ahead and comment saying Zoom, and we'll drop you the Zoom link like we always do. And I'm going to open up the Zoom room right now and just let some of the people in that are here. And we're going to be hearing from myself and Jeremiah and Cole and breaking down everything that happened this past weekend. Whew. What a bunch of games we had. And they really saved the best for last night. Can't wait to hear what your experience was like watching these games. And also look forward to the games that are coming up. But our focus for tonight is going to be on what's called the Second Chance Tournament. And we're going to all be going around the horn, giving our takes on what to expect going into the Sweet 16. Now that we've actually watched these teams play, right? It's kind of a crapshoot filling out the brackets before the tournament kicks off because we haven't laid eyes on all these teams. That's impossible. But now we've seen them play for a weekend. We know who's hot. We know who's injured. We know what teams are really made of. Now is actually the time when our analysis from people like us who watched all the games, it can really pay off. And so that's why we want to be sure to participate in this tournament. It's $50,000 prize. They allow 25 entries. And it's important to take in perspectives and be open-minded from all different sources of information. And that's exactly what we do here on this show. So let's start with getting takes from what you saw over the weekend. And just so we have enough for everyone to go around the horn, let's limit it to just the one thing, the one moment that impacted you most or surprised you most that you'd like to give us a take on. Let's start with Cole. Cole, what was the most impactful moment for you from this weekend, these last 4 days of games?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an impactful moment, but I'll say an impactful player. And I think that's DJ Burns, the big lefty on NC State. I think this is what March is all about. It's all about finding the guys that are, at the end of the day, kind of like these guys are students at the end of the day, student athletes. So for a guy like him, who's a massive individual, has had a 5-year career in college basketball, it's been a heck of a journey for him. And for that team to make it to the Sweet 16 after winning the ACC tournament, I think that's what March is all about, is finding players like that not only dominate, but are kind of like the Cinderella of March so far.
Yeah, and NC State, they are the only double-digit seed that's made it through. And, they're such an interesting team. They only got in because they won their tournament. I watched every single game of them in the tournament. They knocked off Virginia, Duke, North Carolina, the top 3 seeds in the tournament, to win, and won those games all pretty handily, played out of their mind. And I was betting that they were emotionally done. I did not pick them to even make it out of the first round after watching those 3 games, after seeing how good they were. And the other thing that was very interesting about this team is, their record was going into the ACC tournament was 15-14. And so I looked back through a lot of those box scores and was like, how are they losing? Like DJ Brown looks like a baby Shaq out there, right? Or Burns. How have they been losing? And he's been very up and down. He was getting into foul trouble. He'd have games with like 5 points. That just doesn't even seem possible the way he's playing now. But that was the way his whole season has been, kind of up and down like that. So very surprising that they are where they are. And that bracket is now cracked wide open for them to continue to go even further. So great take from Cole to open things up on NC State. Cameron, oh man, love to get your take. I'm sure, that Oregon game was just a heartbreaker. What really stood out to you?
Yeah, what stood out to me is I don't even know who the player of the tournament has been so far, but two of them were arguably on the Ducks. Jermaine Couisnard had 72 points in just his 2 games that he played in, and Dante was an absolute beast down low. And it was kind of a shame when you watch that Creighton game. They were the only two guys that really did anything the whole entire game. It was just them. I was wondering if a third guy, if anyone else on the Ducks would show up. I was really, but no one did. It was just those two carrying the whole entire game. They honestly did that late in the tournament and in the first game against South Carolina. And I really enjoyed watching Couisnard whoop up on his former team in South Carolina. He had 40 points on him. And then I enjoyed watching Dana Altman coach against his former school, Creighton. They pointed out in the game that McDermott was his successor. And before that, it was Dana Altman. They've only had 2 head coaches in like the last 40 years. So it was a really good game. Oregon, unfortunately, ran out of gas in that double overtime. But to me, I don't know if this is a biased opinion, but I thought that was game of the tournament so far. I thought of all the games I had been on, I thought that was game of the tournament. Maybe that Houston and Texas A&M, that was a really good one as well with the buzzer. But yeah, I'm proud of what Oregon did this year. Although we got bounced out in the round of 32, we put up a good fight against the 2 seed Creighton Blue Jays. So I'm not too
Yeah,
mad.
that was a great game. I know I was texting you. Dante was playing out of his mind. That guy is just a beast. The other guy, Cousinard, the guard. Yeah, the two of them were just unstoppable, like you said. Once Creighton started double teaming that pick and roll down the stretch, nobody else could hit an open shot. And it really left me thinking, what took Creighton so long to do that? As soon as they
Yeah.
did that, it just nobody else could score for Oregon, and they were kind of exposed. And but still a tremendous effort, a great season for the Ducks, and great take there from Cam. Edmund, great to see you. So we're doing our one take on what caught your eye the most over this weekend. Oh, you're on mute still. Now it says it's off mute. No, but we're not hearing you though. Must be something with that mic. What
Hey, can you post the Zoom link in the chat? Wendell was asking for it.
Oh, sure. Thanks for keeping an eye on that. I will do that right now. Let's have Dave give his take. Love to hear your perspective on that Houston game.
I'm shocked we made it out alive. That was man, if A&M could hit their free throws, we would have been blown out. That game was everything I feared, everything I told you I was feared, a team that can play athletic, tough defense.
Do that.
That was bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the YouTube chat in here. Let's get everyone over in the YouTube chat and have you guys pick after what you've seen now who you're picking to win it. And then I'm going to drop the Zoom link into the YouTube chat again for anyone that's in the YouTube chat and wants to come up and join us here on the show. There's the Zoom link. I am sold on Houston. And I don't see that game that way, David. I mean, to me, that well, first of all, if Texas A&M wins that game, that goes down as one of the greatest games in the history of the tournament. They kind of blew it at the end, but just coming back from down 10 with a minute and 20 seconds left was amazing. And there were quite a few plays. Like, I don't know if you remember, there was a breakaway Texas A&M had where they called the guy out of bounds and his heel never touched the ground. It was like a lot of moments that could have went the other way, plus all those missed free throws. But then coming into the overtime, I thought Houston stepped up and had closers. I didn't see that at all. I thought Shed, if that's how you say his name, like took over and is the closer. And the other guy who fouled out was knocking down the threes. Very clutch. Like I feel like that for them to, they had They have foul trouble. They have lost some momentum.
The other way.
They have, and let me make sure we got everything on mute here. For them to win that game, those are the kinds of things that you win that one and you kind of rally around it and you go on to win a national championship. So I'm now back all in on Houston after that game. You don't see it that way though, David? You still
No,
think
I
they don't
mean,
have a closer?
A&M missed how many free throws? I mean, we're not even having this conversation if they hit 10 of the 15, 16 missed free throws. I thought it was a terrible officiated game from the very beginning. I thought it was awful. But it's Houston. They play very aggressive. They're like the Legion of Boom. Their thing was, we're going to play super aggressive and we're going to dare the referees to call pass interference every single time, and it's not going to happen. Last night they nearly lost that because they were calling everything, anything. There was a jump ball that they called at the end of the game that I don't know what the refs were looking at. It was terrible. It seemed like, you just breathe in the wrong direction. They were going to call a foul. But I text you at the midway through the first half, when Juwan Roberts started limping, I was like, oof, if he can't go, it's over. It sheds the guy that the offense runs through. But as far as being down low in the post, if we don't have Roberts, it's over. Javier France, he's just a walking foul. That's his problem. LJ Cryer decided to show up. He's very boom or bust. So thankfully he was boom yesterday. And Manuel Sharp's going to be our 3-point guard. He no pun intended. He is the sharpshooter. But he's not the guy that with the game on the line, you say go get a bucket. And Shed showed up last night. He was able to get those buckets in the clutch situation. But like I said previously, we don't have that Marcus Sasser. We don't have that Jarris Walker. We don't have the Tremont Marks to say, hey, here's the ball, go get a basket. Shed was able to do that last night, but I'm not sure he'll be able to do that against Duke. I think Shed is a point guard in the truest form. He'll get it to the right. He'll make the right play. He'll play defense. Nobody's going to out hustle him, but I think Duke's going to.
I see Shed. To me, Shed did things in that game that I've never seen Marcus Sassner do, and he might be a better closer. I mean, in the end, Sassner, he couldn't close, and they would lose always in the end. So I think that Sned played great. He played great in the overtime. That dunk tomahawk putback he had was amazing. Like that was one of the best games I've seen from a player in the tournament, and I was very impressed with him. And I think Duke is very susceptible. I've seen Duke lose a lot of bad games this year to Pitt and Virginia, NC State. They have not always played like they looked in their second game. Really, they didn't look great against Vermont either.
Yeah, but I mean the ACC. I mean, every school you just named is ACC, and they seem to be the only conference that other than Virginia, of course, they're 8-0 outside of that Virginia game. So I'd be worried if we make it past. If we make it past Duke, we've got history with NC State, and that's not something I want to face. That big boy Davis. Man,
I look at it like the bracket's wide open if State's coming in. They're a double-digit seed. Duke to me is weak. I see an easy path. And I'm an ACC guy. UNC is the number 1 seed. They've hold serve. They haven't impressed me. They just did what they were supposed to do. Duke, is where I thought they would be. They got out of playing Wisconsin, right? So they didn't really have to play even a second game against a good team. I'm not expecting them to win. And Clemson is just smoke and mirrors, man. I don't know how Clemson is where they are at all. I don't even think Clemson should have got in. I would have took either Pitt or Wake Forest over Clemson, and they were 6th seed. So they are the surprise to me, but I'm not suddenly people want to suddenly make this an undefeated power conference. That's not who they are. In my opinion, they're a down conference, and UNC was able to roll them, and thus UNC's record is good enough to get a number 1 seed and get some easier games in the first 2 rounds. All right, let's hear from Edmund, and then we're going to dive into our brackets. We're also going to keep an eye on the games that are around the league here tonight. Edmund, what caught your eye the most in the tournament?
Uh, First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah, yep, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yo, just got a brand new laptop today, so that was a great introduction to figuring all of this stuff out. But I think the stuff we already knew. I think UConn just basically showed that it's their tournament to lose, in my opinion. But as of last show, when I told you I was rooting for State, just I'll just have a warm little thing in my heart for State. I don't know for these big blue chip heavy hitters, but as you stated before, they've already upset it. Some big heavy hitters, so maybe they can pull it off. But I just don't see anybody beating UConn. Those are what we call GAMs, grown ass men. Okay, like Connecticut has some boys that are gonna go pro, and when they're on their game, they're just hard to beat. And you saw teams like Baylor when the shot's not falling, they're done. Like when you're playing one and done, you need to have big guys who are a little bit more consistent as opposed to hopefully these buckets drop. So I just think that Connecticut can overcome a lot of this stuff, but I'm still rooting for State.
Yeah, I'm with you, rooting for State. I was not impressed with UConn. To me, they have had two pretty easy games. You can't the Stetson game. You can't count that for anything. Stetson, a 16 seed, the lowest seeded team, lowest ranked team in the tournament, and of course they're going to get pummeled. That didn't do anything for me. And then I wish they had played FAU. FAU came out and shot the bed. Very disappointed in their performance. But then literally the day later, they announced Dusty May's taking the Michigan job. I'm like, oh, this makes sense. You were totally checked out of that whole game. That's why you guys played like crap. And they still took it to overtime because Northwestern is not very good. And unless they're going to beat UConn with their brains, they had no chance, in my opinion. So don't think that UConn was nearly as impressive as, say, Purdue. Purdue, very impressive win. Utah State, I thought looked really good Friday night. I had picked TCU, and when Utah State rolled them, I mean, Utah State had two big guys, 7-footers. They got in foul trouble. I don't like the way the coach, played that out, and Purdue just decimated a Utah State team that they were the first place team in the Mountain West conference, and that conference has 6 teams in. San Diego State's still alive. So to me, Utah State is a quality win from the Bigs, as was Houston's win over Texas A&M. Just a really gritty team. I thought that those teams impressed me more than UConn so far. All right, so let's dive into the actual brackets, and let's just see what we got as far as picks here. If we can make sure everyone's put a pick in here. We've got UConn, Houston, which is probably what most everyone was picking before we got here. And I'm gonna encourage everyone to fill out their second chance tournament tonight bracket. That's what we're really kind of talking through and working through. Let's just take a look at our bracket while we're here. If any of you filled out in our eTalk Sports tournament, I think we wound up having quite a few hundred people play. This is the standings here. I wish it told me your names. Are any of you guys in our top 10 here? I think I saw Will was here.
I'm number 16. I'm like tied, like 10-way tie for 16.
16. Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. My best performing team in our bracket is 151. You can see I picked a lot of UNC to win it all. So obviously that's still alive for me. So that's that. Let's just see what's happening here with this game is my Celtics are rolling up the Hawks. And yeah, so let's pull up these brackets here and just see what do we expect to have happen in these games. So Houston Duke, David made a great case of why Duke could beat Houston, mostly from the Houston side. Duke did look really good. Cam, you've been kind of a fan of some of these Duke freshmen. What do you expect to see happen in this game, this Duke Houston battle?
Yeah, I mean, Duke's got talented players, right? In the Flukowski guy and McCain. I think they, that roster can compete with anyone. I do think that Houston's defense is too good for Duke to be able to handle and try to overcome and beat them. I think Houston will handle them, and then I think they'll handle Purdue as well in the next round. I think Houston's got a real shot at going into the championship here. I got them losing the UConn, or even if UConn's not there, they could have a rematch with Iowa State, right, in the championship. Have a little rematch for that tournament championship that they lost. But I really like Houston's odds to get through Duke and actually make a good championship run here.
Yeah, so Houston, they would play Duke, and then the winner of this NC State Marquette game. Marquette looked really good. We'll talk about that game next. But, to me, Filipkowski, he can get frustrated very easily and has had some really bad games and just get totally taken out of his game. That's what I see happen. And I feel like Houston's kind of the team of destiny as, after winning that. Coming back in overtime really showed me a lot there. Does anyone else have a take on why Duke can win that game? If not, let's talk about State and Marquette. And we got Edmund here from Raleigh. Edmund, what do you think has to happen for State to win that game?
Basically they can't get behind early in the game and play a lot of catch up. They keep the game close, and they don't out trouble. I think that's where they'll can reign supreme and basically try to knock off an upset. And also, too, once again, you're talking about momentum. They have a lot of momentum coming into the tournament. They were playing pretty good before the tournament, so I think that they could be on upset alert. But it's just really about keeping the game closely, because I just don't feel if they get behind that they're going to be able to close the gap.
Yeah, I was impressed with Marquette. They played a Colorado team that looked very good. It was a really high scoring game. Marquette's point guard played really good. Cole, who do you like in this Marquette NC State game?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it kind of just depends on how well Burns does. I think if he has a game where he has 20, 22, 24 points, I think they're a hard team to beat. If they can slow down, you just mentioned their guards. I think one of them's named, they're both lefties, Kolek and I think something Jones. If you can contain either one of those guards, just one or the other, I don't think you have to contain both of them to beat Marquette. But I mean, if they've shown in the past that they can get cold, Kolek was kind of coming in on a slump going into the Big East tournament, I think. So, kind of what Edmund was just saying, NC State's just riding this hot hand that they're on, and it's going to be tough to beat a team whenever they're on an 8, 9, 10 game win streak like they are.
Yeah, Marquette had injuries in the Big East tournament and rested their guys. They all looked fine coming back here. And I don't know, to me, Burns getting 20, that you're going to need 80 points to beat Marquette. I just don't see where State is going to come up with that many points, because I feel like Marquette is going to be able to score at will against State. Will, what do you like in this NC State Marquette game?
I love NC State. I think Marquette is a team. I mean, I'm just basing it off Shaka Smart. I think they do a lot of cause a lot of turnovers, and I think NC State's a little bigger, so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
Okay. Yeah, so we're going to go. The consensus is with State then. And I especially want to do this. I love that David brought up being the Houston guy, the history of NC State and Houston. Have they not played each other since that Miracle Valvano game? That would be a really interesting something to look up. I know David had to jump off for a second. We'll circle back around to that game. All right, so coming down here, Purdue and Gonzaga. I thought Kansas played great in the first round and would beat Gonzaga, and that didn't materialize at all. They were right there in the first half. Gonzaga had some big guys that were shooting threes and driving, which I could see possibly giving Purdue some problems. Edmund, what do you like in this Purdue-Gonzaga game?
Well, I think Purdue is probably going to come out on top. I'm still not sold on Gonzaga quite yet. I just think that Purdue has proven that if when they come to play, they're right there with the teams that probably should be in the Final Four. Whether or not they do it is another story. Um, but I just think they got too much firepower, and that I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy win because this is the tournament. But I mean, if they come in handling their business, they should be able to knock them out and move on.
Yeah, they're coming off an impressive win. Does anybody like Gonzaga in this game? Go ahead and give us your take.
Yeah, being from Indiana, I've had, the ability to watch a lot of Purdue games this year. And there's just something about that team that is just, I don't like. I mean, they have a 7'4" guy, 7'5" Zach Edey. I understand that he's a big man and, you can really, get on his back and just have him, carry you to the finish line. But the fact of the matter is, this is not even a top 3, 5 talented team that Purdue has had in the last couple of years. They made a run with Carson Edwards a few years ago to the Elite Eight. That team was far more talented than this team. And if you watch any of that Utah State game, first off, it's a home game for Purdue. So that entire Gainbridge Fieldhouse was filled with Purdue Boilermaker fans, and you have to take that into account, especially in March. Second thing, they got up 15 early, and I think Wally Zerbiak was talking about at halftime. Utah State was done. Their energy was low. They did not want to fight and come back. That game was over with 6-7 minutes left in the first half. I think that given this buffer of time that Gonzaga is going to have, I think they play the 28th or something like that. So a couple of days to scout this one-dimensional offense that Purdue runs with Zach Edey down low. And I think that, Mark Few is as experienced as any coach in the field. Give him some time to figure out what Zach Edey isn't good at and what this Purdue team isn't good at. And I think Mark Few can capitalize on that for sure.
So are you calling it, Cole?
I'm calling it. I'm taking Gonzaga. I thought Purdue was going to lose to Utah State, and I'm just a hater, so I get that. But I am going to take Gonzaga here, to be honest with you.
Okay.
My problem is you need to speed Purdue up. I mean, Edey didn't even play. It was either last year or the year before. He didn't even play because the team was moving so fast. He was almost a liability on defense. And that could be the same problem with Marquette. So Gonzaga needs the guards, and I think their team is based off of like forwards. And I think Edey can stay in the game and be good. But when you run into a Creighton or Tennessee, that's where the problem is, I think, because they got the guards who can kind of run and keep Edey on the bench because he just can't keep up with them on defense. I think that could be a thing.
Yeah, definitely the pace, but Cole hit it right on the head. Other than I mean, Hurley is the only coach, the UConn coach is the only coach in the tournament with a championship. But you knock him out of the equation. I mean, who are you picking over Mark Few? I mean, this man's been doing it for about 20 plus years at Gonzaga now, and they played earlier in the year too. Gonzaga lost by 10. I didn't see the game myself. But I think that's something to take into account with this being a rematch. Gonzaga is going to have something else to throw at him. And I also think just if looking at the size of the players on the court, nobody's going to be as big as Edey. But Gonzaga does have the size to match up as best as anyone else in the tournament.
Yeah, I think, David, you're right. The game will be close. That rematch will play a big factor. I think Gonzaga, they played them. That was way early beginning in the season. And Gonzaga was struggling to start off the season. They really dialed it in the second half of that season. A lot of people, including myself, was going like, what the hell is going on with Gonzaga this year? But they were able to figure things out. And another cool thing that when I was filling out my Sweet 16 bracket, it said that 5 seeds, which Gonzaga is they're 3-0 against the 1 seeds the past 2 years. And so could this be your potential 1 seed to fall down? I don't know, because Purdue to me, has been very dominant this tournament. 2 teams, they've won their 2 games by 56 points, and UConn has won their 2 games by 67 points. So they've been smoking teams this tournament. They look really hot, and it's hard to just to me, they're at the top right now. So I think it'll be a really close game, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, a lot of good points across the board there. I know I generally don't feel teams led by a big man win championships and progress. So I've been just looking for an excuse for Purdue to lose. I had them losing to TCU, thought they'd lose to Utah State. And they've impressed me. And at the same time, to me, Gonzaga's just not that good a team. I feel like they're already further along than their record or their roster would merit. And I give Mark Few all the credit for that. He's already overachieved getting this team to the Sweet 16. So to think that he's going to somehow give them something even more to beat Purdue, to me, that's like double dipping on the same thing. And I don't think it'll be close. I think Purdue will slay them. I feel like you need this is why, Utah State had guards and had bigs to match up with him. You need a big that can bang with him, that won't foul, that can just kind of box out. Otherwise, he'll kill you on the boards, Edie. And they had that guy, the big fish, Johnson, and I just don't. The coach, he got 2 fouls, and coach took him out the whole rest of the first half, and then the game slipped away. It was gone by halftime. They were blown out. The crowd and momentum took over. So I think the consensus was for Purdue. We had quite a few people picking Purdue, as well as myself, as much as I'd like to see them go down, and didn't pick them in my tournament. All right, let's talk about Tennessee and Creighton. Let's start with Will on this one. Who do you like in this, Will?
I don't know. This one's hard for me. I mean, when I don't know, I go with the best player, and the best player is Dalton Knox. So I'll go Tennessee, but somebody might have a better view on this than me.
Yeah, Dalton Connect has been dominant in every game we've seen him in down the stretch. To me, it's like it's him and a bunch of athletes, like a bunch of scrappers. That's what I see this Tennessee team as, and that's a pretty good formula to go pretty far, in my opinion. I don't see them having a big to match up with Purdue, but that's getting ahead of us a little bit. Anyone else have? Go
I
ahead,
like
Dave.
Tennessee. Like Will said, Dalton Connect, but he also when we are talking about Purdue earlier, this is why I like Tennessee to come out of this side of the bracket. Their tempo, possessions per 40 minutes. They're up there in the top 5, and that's why I think I really thought Oregon was going to pull it off, man. I think it was you were talking about the point guard. I think the point guard got a little lazy there at the end. He pulled a Janelle Davis, J.R. Smith at the end. I think they should have won it. But because Creighton's such a slow team, such slow pace, I think Tennessee runs them off the court. Defense wins championships. You have a superstar in Connect. I think those are the things that Creighton doesn't have, and that's why Tennessee, those 3 reasons, superstar, tempo, and defense, is why they'll win.
Yeah, another reason why we lost that game, big killer moment, was we inbounded the ball to Dante for whatever reason, and then he went to the free throw line and missed his free throws. I mean, come on, Dana Altman, we got to drop play to get the ball to our best free throw shooters. I mean, all we had to do was just make 1 free throw, but that's all right. It was a good game. I really like Creighton, though, coming out of that game. And another thing I like about Creighton is they beat Marquette this year. They've beat Alabama, and they've also beat UConn by 20 points. They play fast. I was worried, honestly, in that first half of the Oregon game. I was glad that it was as tight as it was, because Creighton was getting a lot of open looks. It wasn't that they were getting wide open looks, and they were missing. They just weren't shooting the ball good. They easily could have been up 20 on Oregon if they were hitting those wide open shots. I mean, they weren't missing shots because Oregon wasn't playing good defense. Not in that first half. I thought we gave up way too many open looks. But Creighton, they play fast. They play fast. The reason they were able to break apart that defense was we were never able to match up. We couldn't even match it, and it's a matchup zone. We weren't able to communicate. They would just get a pick and pop, spray away as fast as they could. It's almost a lot like those Houston Rockets with James Harden and Mike D'Antoni coaching. They just, 7 seconds, let it 3, let the 3 fly, take more 3s than 2s. of Creighton's hitting shots. They're dangerous. They're real dangerous.
Yeah, they look
Yeah.
like a complete team and they win over Oregon. And that was it's a win over a quality team in Oregon. It was an impressive win.
Yeah, I mean, you're just said exactly what I was going to say. I want to pick Creighton here. They seem like a more complete offensive team. Last game they had 4 guys score around the 20-point mark, and playing a team like that can be tough to beat. But I think David said it earlier. Tennessee's defense is way better. I think that at this point in the tournament, defense travels. So I like Tennessee in this one as well.
I agree. I was gonna say the same thing. I just think that if they just change the pace of the game, where Creighton can just not be out there playing like Golden State and make them have to play like more of a slower paced game, Tennessee should probably dust them off.
All right. Seems like we got a lot of takes on the Tennessee side. All right. Moving over here, we've got North Carolina against Alabama. That Alabama game, if you guys watched that, feel sorry that you did. I know I did. It was just a slugfest. And this is the Alabama team that set their university record for the most points scored. And it was just a slugfest. It was a brutally under game. Nobody could score. And it was Prairie View, who was physical, but still they're a mid-major team. So I was not impressed with Alabama at all. Does anybody want to make a case for Alabama could maybe win this game?
Hell no. Give me UNC all the way. I think this is like destiny for UNC to win this. I think they have too many guys coming back from their last title team that I can't not take UNC here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they have 2 guys, right? They have Baycott, Baycott and Davis are back from that team that didn't win the title. They lost in the championship game to Kansas that year. So
I think Alabama's one of the biggest wild cards, but I think like their offense is unbelievable, but they have no defense. So I'm going to go North Carolina, but right now I think Alabama is one of the biggest question marks left in this tournament for me because their offense is unbelievable right now. Like they score like crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'll take North Carolina.
All right. What about Clemson, Arizona? Arizona, a team that disappointed a lot of people last year, really the last 2 years, and but they seem to be playing really well right now. Does anyone want to make a case for Clemson to keep this close or win this game?
Clemson's been hot, man. I haven't seen enough of Clemson throughout the season. Arizona struggled a little bit in the first half of their first round game. I don't remember who they played at this point. So this is going to be an interesting game. But I picked Arizona. They've got a better defense. They've got a better offense. But Clemson's been hot, and that momentum, like we see with NC State, you can't take that for granted. So this will be a fun one.
Mm-hmm. Their big man's scary. Clemson is, I think, one of the most underrated big men in the league. But I think it's Arizona.
Yeah, he's a hustler. He seems like Clemson's
Mm-hmm.
big man. I wasn't really impressed with his game. I think Arizona with Caleb Love leading them is different look than Arizona teams of the past that have had these dominant bigs. This looks like a pretty complete team. Clemson, their first round victory was against New Mexico, right? Who I had picked to run this. I think we all fell in love, not all, but a lot of people fell in love with New Mexico, and they just came out flat. So to me, Clemson got an easy win there, and things have just kind of fallen right for them. Baylor, was not really that good this year either. So I think we're in consensus. Arizona's going to take that, which gives us the made for TV matchup of Caleb Love going back up against the North Carolina team. He's the third one from the team that made the championship run that is back, but back with Arizona now. So that'll be exciting. All right, UConn. Will, what did you think of San Diego State? I know you were pretty high on them. You think they have a chance?
I'm number 1 in your bracket, Greg. I don't know why my name says white chicken on one of them. It's weird. But I had San Diego State beating UConn, so I think I'm going to stick with it. I mean, they're coached well. They had one of the best games I've seen, and then they were making threes, and then I know Ladie is unbelievable. Like I've never seen a guy so ripped in my life. It's unbelievable how ripped he is. So I'm probably going to be the only one. I'm going to go San Diego State though.
Yeah, he's a beast. What's his name again?
Something Ladie. I forget his first
Ladie.
name.
Yeah, I think it is like Ladie. That guy is built like Carl Malone, man.
Yeah.
He's a beast. He carries them inside. He makes his free throws. But to me, like the team's built around him, and UConn is going to put the 7-footer on top of him. And UConn's got way too many bigs. I don't see this as a good matchup for them at all. And I don't even really like UConn
They
that much.
should not. I don't know how they had 85 last game because they're a defensive team. Like,
San Diego.
yeah, San Diego State is all defense, but they're scoring a lot, which is interesting.
Is everyone else picking UConn in here?
Yeah, I didn't in my bracket. I didn't even have San Diego State getting past UAB. And up and that game went down to the wire. But it's just like Will was saying, they're a very defensive team. They'll shoot a lot of threes. Other than Ladie, and even then, I wouldn't consider Ladie to be some sort of superstar. But they don't really have much offense going for them. So I think UConn wins by maybe 10.
Yeah, I mean Ladie, he's a college superstar. I don't think his game will translate to the NBA. He's a 6'8" muscle guy. All right, and then of course UConn dodged Auburn. That was the game we all wanted in this spot was going to be SEC champion against Big East champion.
Did anyone see the suspension? I didn't see it. Or when he got kicked out of the game. Was it like a good kick out or no? The Auburn guy.
Yeah, he was targeting.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so this leaves us with the grand finale. I think two of the best teams as far as the matchups go in the 2-3 hole. Illinois and Iowa State. All right, let's start with Cole. Who do you like in this?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough game. I don't think I had either of these teams making it this far, to be honest. So I know Iowa State has great defense. I've watched Illinois recently just because they have Luke Goody. He's from the Fort Wayne area here in Indiana. I don't know. It's hard to go against Iowa State. Everyone's talking about teams that are hot. Clemson's hot, NC State's hot, and Iowa State is probably the hottest team in the country right now, outside of maybe a couple, maybe UConn. But like I said before, Tennessee defense travels. I think Illinois really depends on. I think his name's Shannon, the lefty guard. I think he's a really good player. I think if you can slow him down a little bit, I think it's hard for Illinois to find any success offensively. But I could be wrong. But I'm going to go with Iowa State here.
All right. What about you, Edmund? Who do you like in this one?
These 2 and 3s get real kind of iffy. So I'm gonna roll the dice, and I think let's go with Illinois. This is just my gut feeling because it's just we've been sort of picking the favorites. Somebody that is not a favorite has to get knocked off. So I'm solely picking them for that reason. And I think if their front court can actually just control the pace of the game, I think they can come out victorious. But when you're dealing with a hot team, they're either the buck stops here or they're going to keep going. So that's what kind of scares me. But I'm just my gut. Since we've been picking all favorites, I'm gonna go with Illinois.
I'm gonna go with it.
What about David? It was you're the one who kind of swayed me last week to change this pick to Illinois from Iowa State.
Yeah, so I mean the number one offense versus the number one defense. I've said from the very beginning, I don't think the Big 12 is all that. I think they're just getting a lot of historical love, but this year they didn't really impress me. Because I was really worried for Houston coming into the season. Like, man, I don't know if we'll be able to handle business, but we went in there. None of these teams really scared me. Iowa State's got a phenomenal defense, but the Big 12 didn't have they weren't offensive powerhouses. So we'll see. Unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching the Illinois game. I took the over in that one, and just kind of sat back and watched them run. And man, did they put up a lot of points in that game. And Iowa State, I thought you made some good points about just recency bias, right? They had just blown out Houston in the Big 12 championship game, and I was kind of blown away with that. But to not put too much weight into that one game was what led to me picking Illinois. Anyone want to make the case for Iowa State in this? Otherwise, I think we are all picking Illinois. And we are through to our final 8 here. Going back over to Houston, NC State. Dave's got a lot of history. Have they not played each other since that game?
I think they've played twice, but NC State's 4-0 all time against us. So I want nothing to do with them, especially with that big boy Davis or whatever his name's in the middle. With Roberts hurt, if we make it past Duke, there's no way we can stop that big boy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that the door could be that open for NC State to make it to the Final Four. Their coach was like on the hot seat, almost going to get fired, and now he's riding hot here. What about this?
I know people joke about him, but like I've never seen a guy pass like he passes. It's unbelievable. Like his passes and how he can find the open man. I haven't seen that. Them in Oakland was probably the best game I've seen of the tournament, hands down. I thought that game was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was. I mean, they shut down Oakland pretty well. There, that 3-point shooter couldn't get going for them at all. They played great D on that guy. He had 10 threes in the first round for Oakland. So their D is legit. Like they're playing out of their mind. Yeah, he passes like the Joker, right? That's the only player I can think of, a big man who can pass like that. All right, so moving down here then, Purdue, Tennessee. Look how chalky it is too. It's so interesting to me that last year, if you remember, it was Miami in the Final Four, FAU, and San Diego State. There were all these lower seeds, and everyone said that the transfer portal has opened things up, and this is one of the most chalk years I can remember, with 3 out of 4 teams having 1s and 2s basically in the final 8. So Purdue, Tennessee doesn't really have a big man to match up that inside at all. Anybody want to make the case for Tennessee to win that game?
I think Tennessee's a very physical team. I think that if you can throw the guards off on Purdue, I think we can all assume that Edey's probably going to get 20 and 10. I think that that's probably inevitable at this point in the tournament, but they're going to get physical with those guards. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer on Purdue, thin, wiry guards. I just think that if you're physical with them, you can take them out of the game completely. So I picked Gonzaga over Purdue. I'm a pick Tennessee over Purdue as well.
Yeah, the thing, the games we saw with Tennessee, we watched quite a few of their games on the show, right? We watched them beat Auburn, and Connect had 39 points that game, I think. Connect is a beast. When Tennessee wins, he scores big. And he's a 6'6", kind of, in the NBA, he'd be like a 3-and-D guy, right? He's not really a 3 guy at all. He's 6'6", and can play shooting guard or small forward and drives to score. And to me, that's just not going to be there at all. He's going to run into Edey every time. He's not a guy who can shoot the 3. He's not a guy who even really pulls up for the mid-range. But at 6'6" and being able to put it on the ground, he's usually taller than any shooting guard or small forward you try to guard him with. And that's why Connect is able to dominate. In my opinion, it's going to be, I don't see how Tennessee is going to be able to score with Edey in the middle. Anybody else?
I'm looking at Purdue now. I really thought their guards were better. Like Brandon Smith, he's averaging 12 points a game. I know it was probably like not a huge thing, but he had 11 and 5 points you know?
Yeah, but
So
they blew him out. I feel like he barely
I
did.
know.
Give Edie all he can handle. I don't.
I'm questioning Purdue's guards now that I'm kind of looking. Maybe they're better than I think, but they really don't score a lot. So who's their number two guy? I
Braylon
think that's
Smith,
kind of the question.
the sophomore point guard, is Purdue's number two guy.
Yeah, 12
Um,
points though.
yeah, I mean he hasn't had to score big. They've been up big, and he's been
Mhm.
able to distribute the ball, and he didn't even play much the last 10 minutes of that game. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't watch a lot of him all year, but I thought he was on. He was passing well. The shots he took, I mean, I think he shot a pretty high percentage field goal range. I thought I liked the way he played against Utah State, which were very physical guards, and he held his own, I thought. Anybody else want to make a case for Tennessee to win this game?
Yeah, I'm picking Tennessee. I think this is one of those situations where we talk about we normally talk about this in football, but the SEC just has the best athletes. The Tennessee's got Dalton Connect. Who is the number two option? Now you've got Ziegler and the other big guy, Ayago or something like that. They're stalwarts on the defensive end. Again, nobody's going to hold Zach Edey. I think Cole was saying he's gonna average 20 and 10 throughout the tournament. Just forget about it. But I think they'll be able to run him out of the gym with that one just because of the athletes that they have. I think it's going to be a situation where they're gonna be able to get Edey out of the paint. So I like Tennessee making it to the Final Four.
Yeah. I am surprised. Like I want my number two guy averaging like 15 to 17. And that's not the case for either one of these number two guys. I know
Yeah,
like scoring isn't everything, but it's
Tennessee is
helpful.
led. I mean, Dalton Connect like dominates.
Yeah.
He's their only guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel like he's going to be able to score. And Purdue's can play. Guys can play a better supporting cast. All right, so I'm going to pick it's Purdue going forward through us here, mostly because I want to see DJ Burns against Zach Edey. Now, I think that now you're talking about a fun post up matchup.
That's why I wanted to see Colorado beat Marquette because they have a big old center also. That would have been a fun matchup.
If Colorado had won, yeah. All right, so coming over here, we now have North Carolina against Arizona. Anybody think Arizona can win that game?
Not at all.
We're
I
all
think they're going to be favored, actually, which is interesting.
I don't have a take on
I
it. I'm
like North
praying for
Carolina.
Hubert Davis. So it's just like, they were ready to fire him. Like he just didn't go to the Final Four last year. They were down here like calling for his job. I'm like, what round did they lose in again? I mean, things happen. So
Well, they missed the tournament last year. That was bad. They had 3 returning starters from the championship team and missed the tournament. That was a cluster last year.
in a year's time, look where they are now. Things
Yeah.
happen. You lose people. You got to sort of retool. But they were really calling for his job down here. So I'm just simply
Yeah.
rooting for Hubert Davis before it's a wrap because he's connected to my childhood through the New York Knicks.
Nice. Well, I picked Carolina too. I'll say if you're going to make the case for Arizona, the Pac-12 has been very impressive in this tournament. Their teams have played well. Arizona, won the Pac-12, so that means they're battle tested. And the ACC to me has done well in the tournament, but I don't think the ACC is very good. I think Hubert Davis is the weak link. I think that if they get upset, if they don't win a national title, he's going to be on the hot seat again because he's a number one team. And that's not very fair, but that's UNC's expectations. And you got a lot of great alumni out there that, would love to have this job. So
Something I want to point out about Arizona the rest of the tournament, it's home games. They're playing in LA, they're playing at the Staples Center, these 2 games. And we can never, and then the Final Four is in Arizona. So we can never, Iowa State, that was a home game in the Big 12 championship game for them. And look what they did to Houston. Granted, there are some other things going on, but, that's one thing we definitely need to take into consideration. When I was picking my Final Four, is like North Carolina is the better team, but and North Carolina does travel well, but home
Yeah.
field advantage can never take that for granted.
Well, and let me ask you this, Edmund. If it comes down to a last shot, if it's a last shot between Arizona and North Carolina, who's the player you would most want taking the last shot in that game from both teams? Who's the player who hit all the big shots in their run to the Final Four the last time? Caleb Love. And he's on Arizona now, and he's out for revenge because they ran him out of town. So that scares me too. If it comes down to the end, Caleb Love is I think the best player on the court to hit that last shot. But I picked Carolina. Hopefully Carolina makes it through, but I think that's a lot closer than it might be.
Yeah, in Arizona, they're well balanced. Other than Caleb Love leading the way at 18 points a game, the rest of their starters hover around 10 points. So they're going to be a tough out. And I always look at them as like Gonzaga 2.0, over there in the Pac-12. Ever since they brought in that new coach, man, they've been winning a lot of games and they've been doing good. And I know that a lot of Wildcat fans, they want to make a deep run this year. Arizona has a lot of history of choking games or choking down the stretch, but maybe this can be their year.
I think
Yeah,
I got
I
a
mean,
question for the panel, depending on who we choose to go to the championship, and it's related to Hubert Davis. So I'm gonna save it, but I get your point that their clutch shooter has changed teams, but we'll see.
hey, I picked Carolina, so I'm with you rooting for it. And let's hope it goes. But yeah, and Cameron made a great point that about Arizona's coach there. In fact, we've had on the show here, if you guys remember, we had Matt, what was Matt's last name again? Matt Bowden, who was three-time all-conference Pac-12 player for Gonzaga. And he basically said that the Arizona coach is really he's Mark Few's long-term assistant, and it's like the Belichick Parcells thing that guy is as much the brains behind everything that Gonzaga's done the last 20 years as anybody. And it's his first head coaching job, and he's in his third year. They've let me down the last 2 years, so I didn't even have them going this far. All right, UConn, Illinois. Anyone picking Illinois to win this one?
Nah, UConn's the best team in the tournament in my mind. I don't think there's a team that's going to beat them, honestly.
Well, the best team in the tournament rarely wins the tournament, though, in my opinion, in my experience. I don't think UConn was the best team last year in the tournament. But everyone got knocked off, and then they just kind of rolled. The odds of them repeating, we haven't had a repeat team, since what, the Gators 20 years ago. And that was a very unusual team where the Gators returned all five starters. They all came back to win it. This is a completely different UConn team since three of those guys went on to the NBA last year. That's really all I can reach for in picking against UConn. On paper, they should win, but rarely does that work out here. But we want to have the final matchup here. So UConn, North Carolina. Go ahead. Let's start with Edmund. Make us the case of how North Carolina is going to win this game.
Well, I picked UConn to win the whole thing.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did, but North Carolina can basically win this game by just keep playing at the same level that they've been playing on in the tournament, and basically slowing the game down and not letting UConn just do whatever they want to do. But like I said earlier in the conversation, it's just they're just grown men in Connecticut, and I just don't see anybody beating them. But let's say that happens and North Carolina beats them, which goes to my next point. What would get Hubert Davis fired faster, losing in the round before this one, or him losing to, let's say, an NC State in the championship? Because just being from North Carolina, if he was to lose to NC State, I literally think that would get him
here. So that's literally how big it is here. So that was the point I was getting at earlier.
He already did that. He already lost the ACC conference championship.
But losing him in the big game.
And you know what? He's 0-3
Yeah.
in the ACC tournament now.
Right.
That team has never won an ACC championship. Those kids, Baycott and those kids that have been there for, I think 4, maybe even 5 years now, have never won an ACC championship.
But that just depends on how many of you guys think that NC State can knock off Purdue. So, but that's what I was getting at. So he's still on a hot seat. But I to make the case, they would almost have to play the perfect game in my opinion. And I just it's possible because it is the NCAA tournament, but I just don't see that happening. I think UConn's going to take them.
I think the way Bangkok can play, I mean, his run when they made it the championship was unbelievable. I think people like Caleb Love, but I think I got to go UConn. But I think Bangkok has the potential to take this game over.
Trying to click through into their roster. You can't research from here. Yeah, I mean,
then you click where it says preview.
Oh, preview. There we go. Yeah. So, yeah, to me, UConn is a talented team, but not an experienced team. Tristan Newton leads UConn in points, rebounds, and assists. Was on Eastern Carolina in the first 4 years of his career. He's new, playing in the tournament. Could have March Madness type jitters. And he leads this team across the board. This is not a balanced team. This is a team with him and the 7-footer, basically. And then the rest of those guys do hit timely shots, but they're role players. This is not a roster of NBA players or superstars who have a lot of experience closing out close games. Whereas that North Carolina team, has like that when they played Duke in the Final Four 2 years ago, Coach K's last game, like that's the ultimate pressure game, and they won that game. And so I'm making the case here why I think North Carolina can win this game. I think RJ Davis is more clutch than Tristan Newton, more experienced, more clutch. And, UConn's big guy is like a stiff. He's like, we've seen this profile of players a million times. They're like not a guy who's 7 foot. I don't see how to click into his profile here, but that big guy is not great. He won't get drafted. He's not another Zach Edey. He's just a big guy who can dominate against teams that have, 6'8" centers. But I don't, and that's really all they've played so far in the tournament. So I don't think UConn's roster is that dominant when they run into North Carolina. And North Carolina, the game that really impressed me was when they won at Duke the last weekend. They swept Duke this year. Very hard to win at Duke. It's another environment that is just so tough. And in that game, Duke completely shut down Davis and Baycott. And it was the rest of those guys that stepped up and won that game for them. So that's me making the case for North Carolina to beat UConn, which ultimately is my case for them to win it all. Because I think that's really the championship game there, the two best teams, in my opinion. But imagine, so if we have State against Purdue, Zach Edey against Burns, could we wind up with a North Carolina versus NC State championship? That would be something for the state. They'd be playing each other for the 4th time. Most likely, I'm going to pick us through Purdue to win that just because I think it's so probable that State could lose to Marquette or Houston along the way. Whereas I think it's a lot less likely that Purdue will lose along the way.
I mean, the fact that we have NC State making the Final Four already, this is probably the greatest run a team has ever been on since Kemba Walker's UConn. Winning the ACC, like you said before, this team shouldn't have even made the tournament. They win the ACC, now you're going to have them in the Final Four. I think it's time to hit the road, Jack, and take Purdue to the championship.
Yeah. It's already a storybook season to be in the
Mhm.
Sweet 16. And now we've picked them through here because of the matchups. But yeah, Zach Edey against CJ Burns would be a fun. And then we get to the championship game. And to me, this is the same way the Celtics are going to be able to beat the Nuggets. Is Zach Edey will score twos and RJ Davis will score threes. And in the fourth quarter, you can just outscore them 3 for 2, or even 3 for 1 if they miss on the free throw line. And that's how Carolina could win this game. Does anyone think Purdue can win it all?
My only thing with Purdue is I just think it's like the team of destiny kind of thing, which I hate that reasoning. I just think it's Purdue's year, man. Like I don't know why. I just feel like it's their year to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It's
we heard
really good last year.
last week. We heard quite a few people on the show use the Virginia metaphor that
Yeah.
they were the team that lost in the first round and then came back to win a national championship. And I want to remind you guys that that's the only time that's happened in the 100 years or however many years they've been doing March Madness. Like to think that
100%.
that's going to happen twice in a 5 year span is absurd, in my opinion, to think that like history will repeat itself and the team that lost in the first round would come back to win the championship again. To me, the odds of that are astronomical. Just like I feel the odds of UConn repeating are astronomical. And those are kind of just the looking at the odds of these things happening historically is a big factor for me in
I'm
all.
really starting to question if there's like a great team out there right now. But just really even studying these teams even more. We didn't have to get into it, but I'm really wondering like who is like is
UConn.
there
Yeah.
you think you even with everyone they lost?
UConn is like, I understand Greg said what he just said. That team, top to bottom, is the best team in the country. Tristan Newton last year was in the championship game, had 19 points and 10 rebounds as their guard, 8 of 8 from
Mhm.
the free throw line. That team is all these teams you see winning, going to the Sweet 16, they're partying, they're dumping water on coaches, they're getting their squirt guns out. Hurley goes into the locker room and says, get ready for Boston. We got another game to play. And obviously we have like this team. They don't
Mhm.
care about second round wins, Sweet 16 appearances. Like they're going for the back to back. And Hurley even said in a press conference saying the committee screwed him by putting the Big 12 champ in there, the Big 10 champ in there, and the SEC champ in there. The committee doesn't want to see them go back to back. Is pretty much his
Mhm.
stance. So I think
Mhm.
that they took that personal, and that's why I think they're winning. I think anytime a team has more of a reason to compete and win, I'm gonna go with that team. This is the most talented team I think in the country right now for
So
sure.
everything Cole just said about how it's strictly business with UConn. Candace Parker the other day Friday night was pointing that out about Zach Edey and Purdue, saying, "Hey, they knew they screwed the pooch last year, and when he walks into the arena, it's just tunnel vision. When he comes out at halftime, it's tunnel vision. When he goes back for after the win, it's hey, we're supposed to win. We're going to continue going on." So we talk about team of destiny. Purdue, I think I was the one who brought up the Virginia thing last week, but that would be interesting to see a Purdue UConn or even a Purdue UNC final. I think UConn wins it all. But even UNC kind of has that. Cole mentioned earlier the team of destiny with the players coming back, so it'll be an interesting Final Four. Seeing UConn and UNC, and then whoever out of those two, if Purdue makes it. Like that, I personally don't have Purdue in my Final Four, but I could see them being there because it's such a, we're not here to play games. We're here to win games.
Mhm.
UConn has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in double digits averaging. So you can't really game plan for that a lot of times. You don't know who's going to get hot. That's perfect for a college basketball setting because when you're dealing with somebody like RJ, let's just say he has a bad game and he's not there to carry them like he should be able to carry them. But if he just has a bad game, it throws off your logical sense when you have a team that's well balanced. So I would definitely keep that in mind if they end up going head to head.
Hmm.
Also, a question I wanted to ask everyone, because when they talk about blue bloods, it seems, especially with UConn having just won the championship last year, they seem primed to win it this year. You know, we talk about UCLA, we talk about Kansas, we talk about North Carolina, we talk about Duke, we talk about Kentucky. Can we consider UConn to be a blue blood team, especially if they win the championship this year back to back?
I mean, in terms of my lifetime, my 25 years of life, I've seen that if they win it all this year, that's what their fourth ring. They won one with Kemba, one with Shabazz, obviously last year and then this year. So in terms of the last 2 decades, I think that, they would be the best program, honestly. I think most talented. I mean, obviously, probably couldn't say that because of Kentucky, of how often they have NBA pros coming in and out. But blue bloods is such a strong word because here in Indiana, IU hasn't accomplished anything in 3 decades, probably, maybe 4. So I think blue bloods is kind of an interesting term to use just because you're talking about obviously UCLA, but even UCLA hasn't really done anything the last decade and a half. So blue bloods is an interesting term for sure. But I think if IU's in it, I think you have to put UConn in it is the way I look at it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
2
gonna
rings before, even last year, they were the how many teams have won 2 rings in the last 20 years, right? So just from that, and Kemba was on both of those teams, by the way, wasn't he?
I think Shabazz was on both of them. I think Kemba was a senior in that last in the first
He
run. But I
was.
think Shabazz Napier was on both teams.
Oh, was it Shabazz? I knew there was one of those guys was on both of those teams, right? Was it
I
Shabazz?
think the two kind of hidden teams, they haven't won anything yet. But what Gonzaga does is unbelievable. Like they've made the Sweet 16, was it like 7 or 8 straight years? That's crazy. And then I didn't really think anything of this, and David's gonna get excited. I listened to Houston's coach talk. Like the way he runs that team, he has something there, man. Like the way he runs that team, and they've made runs every year for the past like 3 or 4 years, I think. And I don't know if you ever listen. It was one of the best press conferences I've ever seen from a coach. Just what he does with this team and how he gets them together and a bunch of stuff. So I think Houston and Gonzaga are kind of creeping up there too. Like they're gonna be consistently making the Sweet 16, I think. Sweet 16 Elite Eight-ish, but it was a record. Gonzaga broke a record, I think, for the most Sweet 16 games in a row. So I think that's kind of hidden.
Yeah, good point. It's been something like 20 years of Gonzaga runs now. And it's like the more things change, the more things stay the same in the game. When Kentucky lost, there was some talk of, are the blue bloods done? Is that era over? And yet when we actually look at who's here in the Sweet 16 more than ever, it's Duke, Gonzaga, UNC. Like it's the same UConn, it's the same teams that are here that have always been there. It seems like more than ever, 1s and 2s. All right, well, it's going to be a fun Sweet 16 weekend. And we're going to be back on a week from today. All the games will have taken place. We'll know who's in the Final Four. So we'll be able to do our breakdowns on that a week from today. And then a week from that, we'll be on again. We'll have a watch party for the championship game on that Monday night. And then we'll move into NFL draft coverage, and NBA playoffs will be right around the corner too. So these are exciting times in sports before we hit kind of that summer when basketball's over and football camp hasn't started yet, lull. These next couple months are prime time. So excited to be sharing it all with you guys. Appreciate your contributions tonight, and have a great rest of your night.
Have a good one, fellas.
Have a good one.